This meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order. Today, the committee will address the solitary confinement in federal prisons and immigration detention facilities. 12 years ago, in 2012, I convened the first ever congressional hearing on solitary confinement. I'm disappointed to report that more than a decade later, the overuse of solitary confinement remains a stain on our nation. I would like to turn to a video that depicts the impact of solitary confinement on those who have experienced it.
The diet's horrible, the heat and cold are often unbearable, and normal physical and mental activity, human contact, and access to health care are severely limited. Life in solitary is made all the worse because it's often a hopeless existence. Humans cannot survive without food and water. They can't survive without sleep, but they also cannot survive without hope.
Things like you don't have no hope. You're never going to be out.
She spent about 11 months in isolation, sometimes in a cell like this. Documents show officials knew about her history of mental illness, including prior suicide attempts.
It's not only me, it's a lot of people who's living segregation time right now. And they need to be out there because at the end of the time, when you get up, you're going to feel like me.
I lived under the rules of a system that's literally driving me out of their minds. There was a slot that's called a panhole, and that's how you would receive your food. I had to sit on my steel bunk like a trained dog while the officers would place their trays in my slot. This is no different from the way we train our pets. Solitary confinement makes our criminal justice system criminal.
One of the men who appeared in that video you just saw was Anthony Graves, a witness at my 2012 hearing. His testimony will stick with me for the rest of my life. Mr. Graves spent 18 years on death row, 16 years in solitary confinement, and then he was exonerated and released. Mr. Graves' testimony gave us a glimpse into the impact of solitary on the human mind. At the time of our hearing, Mr. Graves had been out of prison for 2 years, but I can remember very vividly that he was not free from the ravages of his time in solitary. Prolonged exposure to solitary confinement can be as profound and permanent as traumatic brain injury and can result in psychological and physical disabilities. And let me remind you, the vast majority of the people who are in solitary confinement will one day be released. Research by experts and testimony from countless people who spent time in solitary documents how it worsens pre-existing medical and mental health conditions and creates conditions that didn't previously exist. I held a follow-up hearing 2 years ago after my 2012 hearing. We heard from Damon Thibodeau, whom you saw in the video. Mr. Thibodeau tragically died in 2021 from COVID-19. He spent 15 years in solitary confinement before he was exonerated and released in 2012. He told us, and I quote, "I do not condone what those who have killed and committed other serious offenses have done, but I also don't condone what we do to them when we put them in solitary for years on end and treat them as subhuman. We are better than that. As a civilized society, we should be better than that." Mr. Thibodeau was right. We should be better. As the late John McCain, our former colleague and friend, who spent over 5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, said, and I quote, "It's an awful thing, solitary. It crushes your spirit, weakens your resistance more effectively than any form of mistreatment." After my hearings, the Obama administration took some important steps to reduce the use of restricted housing in the federal prison system. Unfortunately, under the Trump administration, that progress stalled, and the rate of individuals in solitary steadily increased. BOP Director Peters told this committee this is one of her priorities. But unfortunately, as I have pointed out numerous times, numbers in solitary in the federal system are higher today than they were 2 years ago. This is deeply disappointing. We are seeing the same alarming pattern in ICE detention facilities. In the last 5 years alone, ICE has placed people in solitary confinement over 14,000 times, with an average duration of 27 days. In 2023, of those detained in solitary in ICE facilities, an estimated 56% had mental health conditions, up from 35% in 2019. Tragic stories of lengthy detention in solitary have surfaced. Last month, a man died in an ICE facility in Tacoma, Washington, after he was held in solitary for almost the entirety of his 4 years in ICE detention. Individuals who violate our criminal immigration laws must be held accountable, but they should be detained in a humane manner that does not violate fundamental human rights. We in Congress can't just blame it on the executive. We must look in the mirror and acknowledge our obligation to eliminate the abuse of solitary. That's why I reintroduced the Solitary Confinement Reform Act with Senator Coons and the Restricting Solitary Confinement Immigration Detention Act with Senator Schatz. I hope my colleagues will join me in making these bills the laws of the land. I now recognize Senator Graham.